Warning! Before we begin, a warning to our listeners and viewers. Today's episode discusses a mass shooting, ongoing public safety failures, and serious breakdowns in law enforcement response and government accountability. While we will not be graphic, the subject matter involves loss of life, institutional incompetence, and unresolved threats to public safety. This episode may be disturbing, not because of imagery, but because of what hasn't been done. If you're looking for comforting narratives or bureaucratic excuses, this is not the show for you. This is Data and Dissonance.
4 days. That's how long it's been since 2 students were murdered at Brown University. And tonight, the shooter is still out there. No name, no arrest, no weapon recovered, no clear explanation. Just vague press conferences, walking back statements, and officials admitting on record that the suspect could be anywhere. This isn't a cold case. This isn't ancient history. This is an active threat that has been allowed to drift into bureaucratic limbo while students scatter for winter break and evidence windows quietly close. When the system fails fast, it's tragic. When it fails slowly, publicly, and without urgency, that's negligence. Tonight, we're asking how Rhode Island managed to drop the ball this badly and why no one seems willing to own it. All right, let's bring in the crew, because this one cuts straight to the bone. Brian's here, already fired up over how a state can fumble a manhunt this badly and still act like it's business as usual. Rachel's with us, ready to separate genuine investigative challenges from outright incompetence and spin. Daniel is here, which means we're about to connect timelines, misstatements, and the quiet decisions that turned an active crime scene into a slow-motion failure. And Skylar's joining us as well, bringing the uncomfortable but necessary questions about institutional trust, public safety, and what happens when leadership chooses optics over urgency. This isn't about politics tonight. It's about responsibility and who disappears when nobody takes it. Let's slow this down and actually walk through what happened, because timelines matter. And right now, Rhode Island is hoping the public forgets theirs. On December 13th, a gunman opened fire inside a Brown University building, killing 2 students and injuring several others during a review session. This wasn't a random street crime with no witnesses and no infrastructure. This was an elite university campus with security systems, emergency protocols, and law enforcement already nearby. And yet, here we are 4 days later, with no suspect in custody, no weapon recovered, and no clear explanation of what went wrong. In the first hours after the shooting, confusion set in fast. Students received alerts that were later corrected. At one point, officials indicated a suspect had been taken into custody, only to reverse that statement. Surveillance footage turned out to be limited or unusable in key areas. Then came the quiet but critical decision. Students were allowed to leave campus for winter break while the investigation was still active. That means witnesses scattered, routines vanished, and time started working against law enforcement instead of for them. And now we're being told the suspect could be anywhere. That's not reassurance. That's an admission. Because when an active shooter investigation reaches day 4 without a name, a motive, or a weapon, something fundamental has broken down. This isn't about blaming individual officers. It's about leadership, coordination, and urgency. And tonight, we're asking how a case with this many resources went cold in real time. And once you hear that phrase, could be anywhere, the tone changes completely. That's not uncertainty anymore. That's loss of control. Brian, you've been waiting for this.
This is what happens when leadership hesitates during the most critical window of an investigation. The first 24 to 48 hours after a mass shooting are everything. You lock the perimeter, you flood the area with manpower, you secure exits, and you control information so the public isn't guessing. Rhode Island did the opposite. Mixed alerts, public walkbacks, and a visible loss of urgency once the cameras moved on. That's not bad luck. That's bad command. What really gets me is how quickly this shifted from catch the killer to manage the optics. Press conferences got thinner, updates got vaguer, and suddenly we're hearing more about how difficult the investigation is than about what progress is being made. That tells me leadership is already in defensive mode. When officials start explaining limitations instead of outcomes, it usually means they know they're behind and they're trying to lower expectations. And let's be blunt, if this shooter had been caught in the first 48 hours, we'd be hearing about it nonstop. But silence now suggests momentum is gone. Every hour that passes gives the suspect more distance, more cover, and more opportunity to disappear. Public safety doesn't get a timeout. 2 students are dead and Rhode Island looks like it's hoping time smooths this over. It won't.
And when urgency disappears, trust goes with it. Especially for parents and students who are being asked to believe everything is under control, while the facts say otherwise. Rachel, this is where transparency really starts to matter.
That's exactly right. People understand that investigations are complex, but what they don't tolerate is being misled. When students receive alerts that later turn out to be wrong, the damage is immediate. Parents are making decisions based on false information. Students don't know whether to shelter, leave, or resume normal life. That kind of confusion doesn't just create fear, it destroys confidence in the system. What makes this worse is how quickly communication shifted from clarity to vagueness. Repeating, "The investigation is ongoing," doesn't reassure anyone when there's no visible progress. Transparency doesn't mean releasing every detail. It means being honest about what you know, what you don't, and what went wrong. And right now, it feels like officials are protecting institutions instead of people. Elite campuses love to talk about preparedness until something happens. Then we find out how much of it is theater. Cameras that don't cover key areas, alert systems that misfire, safety plans that look great on paper but fall apart under pressure. Students deserve more than post-incident promises. They deserve systems that work when it actually matters.
And when systems fail, patterns start to emerge. Not theories, not speculation, but repeatable signs of institutional breakdown. Daniel, take us there.
This case has all the hallmarks of institutional paralysis. Too many agencies involved, too many layers of approval, and no single authority clearly driving the operation. When that happens, decisions slow down. Evidence collection gets fragmented. Digital trails cool off. And by the time leadership realizes momentum is gone, it's already unrecoverable. What stands out to me is how quickly the narrative shifted from action to explanation. Instead of hearing about narrowed suspects or focused leads, we started hearing about challenges, limitations, and obstacles. That's a tell. When officials prepare the public for disappointment, it usually means they're already behind the curve. This isn't conspiracy, it's pattern recognition based on past failures. And once witnesses disperse and routines disappear, the case becomes exponentially harder. Letting students leave campus while the shooter was still unidentified was a massive gamble. That's not hindsight. That's investigative reality. You don't pause a manhunt because the calendar says winter break. You adapt or you lose the trail.
And the people who feel that loss most aren't officials. It's students, families, and communities living with uncertainty. Skylar, close us out here.
I don't want to turn this into a blanket attack on every officer involved because frontline investigators are often doing the best they can within broken systems. But systems matter more than individuals. When alerts fail, cameras fail, and leadership communication collapses, that's not a street-level issue, that's a policy and planning failure. Students don't care about jurisdictional excuses or bureaucratic explanations. They care about whether the person who killed their classmates is still free. Right now, the answer is yes. And that uncertainty lingers long after press conferences end. Safety isn't restored through statements. It's restored through results. What worries me most is normalization. When mass shootings fade into unresolved background noise, people start accepting failure as inevitable. That's dangerous. Accountability has to exist, even when answers are uncomfortable. Otherwise, the lesson learned is that institutions can fail publicly and face no real consequences.
And that's the question Rhode Island still hasn't answered. Who owns this failure? Because until someone does, the public is left with silence, uncertainty, and a killer who walked away. Quick pause, because keeping Data and Dissonance independent matters, especially on nights like this. If you want to support the show, head to the merch store and check out the Zero Fucks Given hats, the I identify as non-binary hoodies, the 1776 gear, mugs, tumblers, and our USA roasted coffee blends. No corporate sponsors, no narrative filters. Just direct support that keeps this mic on and this show honest. The links are in the description. Wear it, use it, and remind people you're not buying what they're selling. Here's the part that should bother everyone, regardless of politics, ideology, or where you fall on any issue. 2 students were murdered. Not overseas, not decades ago, not in some abstract statistic. They were killed on a university campus in America, and 4 days later, the system responsible for public safety cannot tell the public who did it, where they are, or whether they're still a threat. That is not an unsolvable mystery. That is a failure of execution, communication, and leadership. We're told to trust institutions, but trust isn't automatic, and it isn't permanent. Trust is earned through competence, transparency, and urgency. When alerts are wrong, when statements are walked back, when witnesses disperse while an investigation stalls, and when officials start speaking in vague reassurances instead of clear facts, trust doesn't just erode, it collapses. And once it's gone, it doesn't come back with a press release. What makes this worse is the quiet acceptance of delay, the normalization of, these things take time. Yes, investigations are complex, but urgency is not optional. Momentum matters. The first 48 hours matter. Accountability matters. And when leaders can't clearly say what went wrong or who's responsible, the public is left with the unsettling realization that nobody is actually in charge. This show isn't here to exploit tragedy. It's here to refuse silence. Because silence protects systems, not victims. And the moment we stop demanding answers is the moment failure becomes policy. Remember to speak truth. Stir thought. Tonight's episode is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series. The Covenant Protocol, The Prophet Directive, and Black Echo Rising. These are stories about covert power, institutional failure, and what happens when truth is buried under bureaucracy. Fiction that feels a little too close to reality. All links are in the description. Book 3 is out now, and Book 4 is on the way.